So Apple has spoken, the reports are in, the facts are in, and yeah, you know what? Turns out the iPhone XR is outselling the iPhone XS. Or is it? I'm here to just kind of push everyone's buttons today and make things a little bit more interesting, but mostly this is not a desperate attempt to get more views, so that would kind of help me out right now if you don't mind. No, I am genuinely kind of interested in this particular topic because of a lot of inconsistencies and a lot of things that are kind of bizarre to me about the statistics. So obviously, the Apple VP announced that the iPhone XR, and the important thing you have to pay attention to is the phrasing here. I think he worded it very, very carefully, and he could have worded it in a lot better ways that I think could have just answered a lot of our questions, but he worded it very particularly. He said the iPhone XR has been outselling the XS every week it has been available. So he's being somewhat specific about the sales of the XR and also somewhat not specific in an effort to make Apple look good to the media. And that is a very difficult thing for Apple to do because most of the time Apple would release product unit sales and people would look at the decline and say Apple is doomed. They're gonna die, look at the stock price, Apple's gonna die any second now. So we know that this year Apple is no longer releasing unit figures, so they're not telling people anymore how much each individual product sold, which makes our prediction jobs a little bit more difficult, but they did this in an effort to make the company look better. They are just going to be reporting on revenue so that you can know that the money situation is good, but that's probably because the smartphone market is in decline, but they just want people to know that revenue is higher because smartphones are getting more expensive as time goes on. People are spending more money. They may not be buying as many iPhones as they used to, but since they're more expensive, revenue is going to look like it is growing. That way, your company doesn't look that bad to the press. Now, I think it would have been very easy for the VP to just say, the XR is the best-selling iPhone we've released this year. It's outselling the XS, period. But he had to go ahead and throw in that little tagline of every week it's been available. Now, I know it may have seemed like a long time ago for a lot of you, but the iPhone XR is really not that old. Launch day being October 26th, and the day they announced this happened to be around November 28th. So within that time frame, essentially, with the stats they have available, that means that bizarrely they were announcing that the XR was outselling the XS after 4 weeks of the product being available, which I don't know if you guys have remembered in the past when Apple talks about product unit sales and which phones sell much better than others. That's very, very early. They're very, very quick to jump on and say, by the way, XR is outselling the XS. Just make sure you remember that. If we look back at what happened last year with the iPhone X, it had the launch date of November 3rd, and we didn't know exactly how good the sales were until many, many months later. In fact, it wasn't even until May that Apple confirmed every week that the iPhone X has been available. It has been the top-selling iPhone. So then we could all understand that we're all on the same page, unless, of course, you believe Apple's lying, in which case all of this is meaningless. If you think they're lying about their sales, then we can't have a conversation. We don't have any facts to base this off of. But my point is, that was over the span of like nearly 5 to 6 months. They waited nearly half a year just to let you know, hey, the iPhone X is still selling really, really well. So that confirms a lot more of a market trend, in my opinion, because we can see a lot more data over a lot more time. What's bizarre to me is the fact that Apple's releasing this information, specifically the VP, only 4 weeks after the launch. Now, I'm not saying that there's no possible way the XR could be the best-selling iPhone this year. That's entirely possible, and I could absolutely see that happening. I'm not trying to rule out that possibility. My point is, it's far too early to know. Despite a lot of other smartphones coming out and a lot of other craziness happening in the tech world right now, these are still very, very new phones. The XS was available for about a full month before the XR became available, and you notice that the VP didn't want to say that the XR outsold the XS. He wanted to say the XR outsold the XS every week it's been available, which is what really confuses me about the statement. First of all, why does he have to be specific about that? Probably because, as we saw with the pre-order period of the iPhone XR, this thing did not sell out very quickly. The only reason the XR was delayed in terms of shipments was because they said they were low on supplies for the iPhone XR. So this one was supposed to be short in supply. They weren't supposed to have a ton of XRs available, whereas the XS, XS Max, they apparently had plenty of. That's how they were able to release them on launch day. And yet, even though they had plenty of XS and XS Maxes out there, this one sold out and shipping dates started slipping way, way, way earlier than the XR. And as someone who actually went to the iPhone XR launch date, I can confirm that the people that showed up to the Apple Store for the XR was way less. It was even more dead at the Apple Store than the release of the iPhone 8 last year, which I didn't expect to be a big turnout at all. And it wasn't. There definitely wasn't a lot of people coming out for the iPhone 8, but it was probably because they were all waiting for the iPhone 10, whereas this year, the cool, premium, better version that people who want the best possible iPhone already purchased, that had already been out for a month. No one was going to wait around for another month so that they could buy a more budget option. They just went straight forward and took the XS, and a lot of people didn't even know this was coming. A lot of people just saw in the news, oh, new iPhones are out, I have an upgrade ready. They upgraded their iPhones, and then they went about their daily lives. A month goes by, they see the ad for the XR, and they're like, wait, what? I thought the new ones just came out. As crazy as this may sound, it turns out it might actually be a common market trend, as Apple has made some decisions for the iPhone XR that they really don't often make with their smartphones. For instance, the XR was doing so poorly in Japan, remember we talked about this a few weeks ago, that there were rumors spreading of them actually lowering the price of the product only a couple of weeks after it had been released, which for Apple, that's a very rare thing to do. We're not talking about Black Friday deals. We're not talking about Cyber Monday. We're just saying they had a set price. The phone was selling so badly in that country that they decided to lower the price for everyone and permanently. They're not putting it back up. Also in Japan, they said that with the release of the XS, a lot of people were looking for new iPhones but ended up buying the iPhone 8 anyway because that was available in September and it was even cheaper than the iPhone XR. Once again, proving a lot of my theories about the XR kind of being a distorted market. So once again, let me clarify. I am not absolutely saying that the XR can't be the best-selling iPhone. That's fine. It absolutely could be. I'm just saying we only have 4 weeks of data to work with, and I find it a little bit bizarre that Apple's made drastic measures to lower the price of this phone, have the VP talk about the sales only 4 weeks after the phone came out, opposed to usually waiting a couple months at least to tell people which iPhone's outselling the other iPhones. So my theory is that perhaps, and again, this is more of a conspiracy theory, perhaps the XS Max had a really good launch, but of course everyone bought it as soon as it was available. They died down, obviously, over the course of the month, like any smartphone sale does. And then when the XR came out, obviously, more people buy new phones. Anytime a new iPhone comes out, a lot of people are going to purchase it. And then over time, those sales decline. Now, I don't think that the XR is going to die down in sales very quickly like the XS did because it's a phone for more everyday people. And those everyday people are not buying new iPhones as soon as they come out. They're buying them throughout the year. And because of that fact alone, that's why I'm saying we need to wait before we make a definitive conclusion until we have more evidence, more numbers to go by, maybe in May, maybe in March, where Q1 is over, and then Apple can start confirming which iPhones are more trendy, which iPhones appeal to more people, because this is a very odd lineup. This is the first time they made a more budget-oriented phone, but it was kind of mid-size between the premium phones, and it's still made of aluminum and glass, and it has a lot of premium features, and a lot of you out there are probably saying that there's not that many big differences between these two, but I would argue it's the little differences that make the ultimate purchase worth it. I even know a lot of people out there that are convinced that the iPhone XR is going to be a top seller, but they themselves don't use it because, you know, they would rather have the better version. They would rather have the nicer version. I think surprisingly enough, a lot of Apple customers think that way. You know, if they're buying an iPhone, they're going to go all out. Why make compromises if you can get the complete package? So those are my theories overall on why Apple confirmed that the iPhone XR was outselling the iPhone XS for every week that it's been available. Maybe they're having to say that right now because the XR sales are going down like this. Maybe not as exciting as they were hoping, as we know from multiple sources that all the iPhones that came out are not meeting their targeted demands. Maybe the XR is slipping a lot faster than they were anticipating and might dip below the XS in any day. And because of that, that's why they wanted their VP to go out and tell everyone, hey, the XR has been the best-selling iPhone every week since it's been available. But yeah, that's all you need to know. Just a little fishy, and it's just a little peculiar that they decided to do it so early, despite there being plenty of reports and plenty of instances of the XR not being that big of a seller. Let me know what you guys think of all this data that I've presented to you today, and let me know what your grand theory of, in the grand scheme of 2019, are the XR and XS going to go hand in hand? Is the XS going to completely flop, or is the XR not going to meet the demand everyone was anticipating? All that good stuff, let me know in the comments below. This is your Apple Sheep here. I'll see you in the next one.